Okay, so quick story time before we get to the good stuff and really dive in deep with why you're here today to give our founders and business leaders all the info they need about public speaking. So, I actually got into the world of marketing through PR. And the reason I got into PR is because there was a strike locally when I was living in the Bay Area in California. And the PR person that was representing the unions just did not, he just seemed like a total jerk on that, like through the media as he was representing them. So I was like, I could totally do this better. And so one of my very first classes in college on public speaking, I had to give an improv speech in class. And luckily, I thought I pulled the topic of public speaking. So I was like, great, I'm just going to talk about how I want to be a speech coach. And
Mm.
so not only did I get up there and tell the teacher that I wanted to basically do what she did, but professionally. And then when everybody started laughing, realizing that I was basically slamming the teacher, the professor, I was like, no, 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 I just mean I'm going to make more money. And then I was like, okay, so improv may not be for me.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's pretty meta to pick up public speaking and have to give an improvised public speaking session on public speaking. Um, but also, I could tell you improv is for you because you're improvising all the time, whether you realize it or not. And you got people to laugh, which is also, an element of improv that we don't try to make people laugh necessarily, but
Mhm.
at least in improv comedy we do. But in life, you don't need to. But life is funny, and sometimes things are funny. And it sounds like you nailed it. Sounds like you
You know
aced
what?
that speech.
I needed you back then in college to just be like, no, no, you were spot on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if the teacher felt intimidated or like that's on them, like
She gave me an A. She
yeah,
was
there you
really
go.
good.
Aced it. Mic drop, nailed
I
it.
love it. Welcome to Managed Chaos Podcast, where we give you the startup business rundown in less time than it takes for you to get to work. I'm Rachel Anderson, and today I am joined by a guest host, the incredible Mary Lemmer, to talk all about how to creatively adapt to the curveballs that get thrown to you as a founder and business leader. Mary Lemmer is a globally recognized speaker, author, and entrepreneur who helps leaders and teams thrive in uncertainty using her innovative approach that blends improv, comedy, research-backed techniques, and decades of experience as an entrepreneur, investor, and executive. A TED speaker and Second City trained improviser. Mary has worked with Fortune 100 companies, fast-growing startups, and top universities to enhance communication, collaboration, and creativity in leaders and teams. Her TED Talk, How Improv Can Improve Your Leadership in Life, has inspired audiences worldwide with practical tools for creatively navigating change and managing complexity. With humor and heart, Mary equips leaders to handle anything that comes their way. Welcome, Mary. I'm so glad you're here.
So glad to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, you shared with me that improv comedy and with other people is more than just fun and games. So, as you just kind of introduce yourself and this concept to our entire audience, tell me more about what you really mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say like improv is fun and games, and it's like kind of a yes and moment, and we love yes and improv. And I was a really a very focused kind of type A personality. I had started a business. I was working at an early stage venture capital firm. I was like teaching fitness classes. Like my life was packed, and I had like color coded planners, and my calendar was highly organized, and so I was like very far from what someone might see as like a natural improviser,
Mm.
right? I was like, give me the script, like, let me do the thing here. But I was also a very creative kid and always writing and pretending and making things. And so I hit a point as an entrepreneur where I was just like, nothing was going to plan. And I would really struggle with that.
Mm.
So I signed up for an improv class because I was like, I need some fun and games, I need
Yeah.
like something that's just going to be for me and doesn't have to do with work and give myself a break. And so there's a little bit of irony in that I stepped into that improv class and I was like, oh, like I felt so relaxed, which often surprises people because often improv is seen to be like very intimidating. But the reality is when you improvise, all those fun and games and the principles around the fun and games, like you can't there's no right or wrong. It's just like exist, and we're going to support what each other says. We're going to build on it. We're going to laugh. And so to me, that was very freeing. And so it is fun and games. And then also there's this element of like, oh, when you feel that level of relaxation and that psychological safety, you can take risks. And because it's almost like practicing cartwheels in a bounce house, right? Or in with like the rubber or soft floors. Like you can't hurt yourself, but if you practice there because there's a safety in that before you go do cartwheels on the cement, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's what improv was for me. Is like, oh, I get to like, take risks or take on new character traits and see what this feels like in the safety of this improv environment where like no one's going to be like that's wrong or that's stupid. It's all like really embraced and supported. And so that actually fostered a lot of this kind of personal and professional transformation for me and now others that I've seen and work with, because it allows us to change and grow in a way that is really powerful, right? Because you can show up and have some fun games where you get to play a really big, bold, confident character, which is very unlikely like you in your real life. But then you do that and you're like, oh, I can be this. Like it's safe and like people like it. And it's like, oh, now I could be this way more in my real life. Right. So there's some serious like nervous system training that happens in improv. So that's why I like to say it's like it's not just fun and games. It's like actually a really powerful tool for personal and professional transformation.
I really love that. I love this on two different levels. First is that there's so many times where I am working with business leaders or I talk to a business leader that's getting ready for a big moment, especially when it comes to funding. And you can feel this nervousness of anticipation and what not to expect or what to expect and all these things. And I just think how you described improv would be such a benefit to them in embracing some of that unknown and making it friend, not foe, which I think is really cool. And then it also made me think about this thing the other day I saw where there's certain things you can do to sort of put on the character of yourself to help you
Mhm.
do something that is scary. And all of that sounds so perfectly driven within improv.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like I like how you worded it of like you play the character of yourself. And whether we realize it or not, we're all improvising, right? And we're all playing different roles. Um, and actors and improvisers are trained to be able to step into different characters, different versions of themselves,
Mhm.
right? And so if we can use that environment to practice that, we can be better about it in our lives and really show up intentionally, because how we show up at work in a meeting where we're giving a presentation is and probably should be different than how we show up with a child, right?
Yeah,
And the tone we use, the language we use, the physicality. So, yeah, we get to really try on and expand our character range when we improvise so that we can expand our character range and our capacity to navigate change and deal with different situations in our life.
I really like that. Expand our character to really embrace that.
Yeah.
So as you've gotten into improv, and then that sounds like it's really starting to incredibly impact your entrepreneurial journey, and I mean, you do this now professionally. What has improvising really changed for you? And how has it really then been a benefit to other people as you've kind of navigated this new thing?
It's changed so much, for me. I think the before picture for me was that, like, high anxiety, like, really, something would happen that wasn't in my control or didn't what wasn't planned, and it would, like, topple me over, right? To
Mhm,
the point
mhm,
even of experiencing panic attacks,
mm,
um, and being, like, really kind of more nervous about things and like, a worrier, and look, I still worry.
mm,
Sometimes I still experience anxiety, but the post kind of improv or as I've practiced improv, I've been much more like go with the flow, right? And recognizing
mhm,
things that are in my control and not in my control. I can't control the weather. I can't control what happens in the world, but I control how I respond to it, right? I can control my
mm.
character choice. And so it's given me that ability to kind of regulate my own nervous system, and show up in interpersonal situations that used to be really stress inducing for me, whether it's giving a really important presentation or having a difficult conversation, um, or showing up to some event that I didn't know anybody at, and like being able to be like, okay, like, I can navigate the unknown with a lot more inner peace and a lot more confidence and insecurity, and then also that ability to adapt to change. I mean, I've lived in many different places, and being
Mhm.
able to move and being able to adjust, or like, life is filled with these things. You get a flight delay, or you get sick, or like something happens. Like, I can handle all those in such a more um like strong, confident, and peaceful way. And I've seen this now, like that's how it benefits others. Like
Mm.
anyone who navigates with the unknown or uncertainty, or finds themselves worrying about the future, or kind of stressed about something that happened in the past, like improv really helps be in that moment, be in the scene you're in, and
Mhm.
kind of accept the reality to move forward, right? Because when you're resisting that reality, you can't really solve problems or move forward. And that was kind of me before, is like I'd be so upset that something would happen, or frustrated, but then it would like take too much time and energy from actually saying, okay, like this thing is broken. Let's just acknowledge it's broken. So being like, sure, be angry it's broken, but then be able to like get through that really quickly to then move the scene forward. And as improvisers, we're trained to really react and then move forward, right? Because no one wants to see an improv scene where people are just upset about something breaking for the entire 10 minutes, right? We want to see some action. And that's similar in life. So I think overarchingly, improv and the practice of improv really helps build that creative problem solving muscle, that ability to be present, to navigate change, uncertainty, situations outside of your control in ways that are a little bit more peaceful, inner joy, and don't destroy you.
I really like that. It's surprising to me because what I didn't think about before we had this conversation is how much there is a mindset shift that goes on with that. And I know working with so many business leaders, I'm sure you've seen too, that's almost one of the biggest barriers to success is like you get in your own head about whatever it is and in whatever way that looks like for you. And that can be a really tough thing to overcome. And so this almost feels so rooted in like healthy mind space, both to give you that and also to get that from it. Would you say that that's pretty true?
I'll say yes, and yes, that's totally it. And also, it's the mindset combined with the physicality, right? Because
Mm.
we all could read all the books about how to be more confident, or believe in ourselves, or have a difficult conversation, or navigate a changing scenario. But if it's up here only, we still have like a physical kind of response that is just kind of that nervous system response when we get in that fight or flight because something is, oh, I like struggle with different conversations. And so improv is kind of more of a psychosomatic practice where you're developing this mindset, but also you get to practice it in a scene, right? Or in an exercise. So you are kind of retraining that automatic response to be like, oh, okay, like these are the things I need to do to be more confident, or these are some reframes I can give. But also now I get to practice that. I get to practice that new character choice so that it's more sustainable and it lasts longer.
That's really great. So thinking about it and trying to take down into like really practical things. If you're talking to a leader or a founder and you're having this conversation and they're like, okay, but what can I really do like practically to either start down this path of trying it or um, practicing it regularly or like what's a practical takeaway step that someone could do to start this kind of improv practice for themselves?
Yeah, and there's so many things depending on what you're trying to improve, but I'll share a few specific ones that come up a lot for leaders. and founders. So one thing for founders, and myself included in this, is like we can be so in the weeds of what we're doing, so that when we share it with someone of like, hey, what are you working on? Or tell me about your company. And it's like, blah, like all the things, right? And so,
Yeah.
and as we know, and I know this from my time, like say as a recovering venture capitalist, right, of
Mhm.
how founders pitch makes a big difference in not just the money they raise, but the people they get engaged and excited about what they're doing and new customers. And so we got to be concise, we got to be clear, and we got to be compelling, right?
Mm.
And so there's an exercise I've taken founders through called half pitch, which is inspired by an improv exercise called half life, where we do the pitch for a minute and then you do your pitch for 30 seconds, you do it for 15 seconds, 7.5, and you got like 4 seconds, right? And then we go back up to the minute pitch. What we find is that in that minute, it's just like, oh my gosh, there's like all these things. And what we do, we cut it out, we cut out the fat, we trim the fat. And then when we go back up to a minute, your pitch is a lot clearer. You've kind of
Mhm.
hit the key points instead of just like data dumping. And so any founder can practice this. You can set a timer for a minute, give your pitch, do it in 30 seconds, and just keep cutting it in half until you got that 4 second, I sell cars or whatever it is. If you really get to the meat of what you're doing, and then go back up to that minute pitch. And I've done this so many times, and it's always feels like magic to see the first minute and the second minute, and it always kind of blows whoever's watching like watching this pitch mind, like, oh my gosh, this was like such a better pitch. So I think that's a really potent one for like that storytelling aspect for founders and
Mhm.
leaders. And then one like very simple one is called pointing, and you just point at objects in your space and label them. So I might point like wall, flowers, dresser, dog, and then you point at the things and you say what they're not. So I might say zebra, elephant, chocolate bar. And the first part of that helps you get present, right? If you're worried
Mm.
about something or your mind is what you were working on earlier and you need to get like, I need to focus on this project, or I just like need to get my head in the game to like prep for this meeting, do the pointing. The second piece is kind of seeing things in new ways. So when you think about like getting your brain, that creative part of your brain where you can creatively problem solve or look at a problem you're trying to solve in a new way, one way to do that is look at a sticky note and call it a ice bucket, because you're exercising that creative muscle, you're engaging it. And so then going into whatever you need to do, you're in this place of being really present from labeling things, and you're also in this place of like, okay, I can like start to see things in new ways. My creativity um is kind of activated. So those are like two really, two very practical things anyone can do to apply kind of improvisational practice to help them improve focus, creative problem solving, and storytelling.
Those are incredible tips. Thank you so much. Well, this is all we have time for today, but where can people reach you if they want to learn more about improv or even about how you can help them kind of get to that next level?
You can find me at chooseimprove.com, and you can also find me on Substack. Every week I write a post on Substack called Life Improvised, and it's filled with like stories and tips and tricks and techniques you can use. And then you can occasionally find me stuck in traffic in Southern California. So, but please don't find me there. Like, don't look for me there. It's messy. Um, but yeah, please reach out if you want to learn ways that improv and an improvisation practice can help you. I love sharing about this and hope that the tips are helpful for anyone listening.
Thank you so much, Mary. This has been a really good conversation.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
This has been another amazing episode with our remarkable guest, Mary Lemmer. I can't wait to talk to you again on our next episode of the Managed Chaos podcast.